I played 100 Days of Stardew Valley 1.6 as a certified fancy farmer, and here's how it went. Okay, before we actually get into it, I do want to make a small disclaimer. I'm just a girl. I'm not a speedrunner or min-maxer, so you have been warned and informed. So now getting into it, on day 1, I always make it a point to greet as many villagers as possible. I kind of do my own off-the-cuff speedrun, trying my best to greet them all in one day. But the days are short and my attention span is shorter, so I never quite get them all. I'll collect them all one day, don't you worry. And I know what you're probably thinking. A certified fancy farmer would not simply greet villagers. Oh no, it would be the other way around. The entire Stardew population should come knocking on my door. And I would agree, except for the fact it's obvious they have no morals as they let my farm waste away for years. I mean, you clearly know the saying, if you want something done fancy, then you have to do it yourself. So this is my cross to bear. Okay, I know what else you're thinking. What does it even mean to be a fancy farmer? Well, I'm glad you asked. With the addition of 1.6, dehydrators and fish smokers have made an appearance to the game, only adding to the number of machines to produce some sweet, high-value product, the fanciest of products, of course. You see, I'm not gonna sell a single thing that has not been processed. Essentially, we don't like it raw here, okay? In other words, I won't be able to sell anything unless it has been squashed into jam, wine, fruit leather, or even a recipe. Along with my fancy farm life, I want to have a fancy love life as well. So I'm aiming to romance Elliot. Bold choice, I know, especially since it is confirmed he is quite stinky, but with his luscious locks, there's no way I can deny that he's not the most fancy villager for miles. I'll just have to hold my breath whenever I'm around him. Speaking of stinky villagers, I did pay Pierre a visit after meeting my 2 resident chicks courtesy of the Meadowlands farm. I stocked up on some parsnips for that farming experience. I felt a little daring, so I splurged on a cauliflower seed. Already got my mind locked on completing the community center. While running all over town, I foraged along the way, but since my backpack space isn't so fancy yet, I can't pick up too many items. So I settled for the little bit of forage I did manage to stash, and then headed back to the farm once it started getting a little too dark for comfort. I quickly planted my seeds and then cleared some of the farm out since no energy can go to waste this early in the game. And I guess I took that a little too literally because I did end up overexerting myself. Novice move, if I do say so myself, but at least I'm close to home, so I quickly, or as quickly as possible, headed to my bed, which is way too far away for my personal taste. The next day, it's no surprise that I wake up to no profits, and this is gonna be a familiar sight in these early days as I currently have no means of processing any of my finds. I can get my hands on a dehydrator with the mushroom cave, but I'll have to have 25k profits first. The fish smoker doesn't come free on the Meadowlands farm like it does on the Riverlands. The preserve jar, mayo machine, and kegs don't get unlocked until I increase in my farming levels, so it looks like I'll be living the low-key fancy life at first. Diet fancy, if you will, and that's kind of exactly how this day goes. After having watered my crops, I dug around in the trash. Shh, dumpster diving is in fact an activity only the fanciest of people do. Trust me, I mean, how else do you think Elliot got to smell so gross? Fancy people just can't have it all, despite my best efforts. I'm still blaming the Stardew community. Actually, I should really be blaming my Stardew parents. They must have known Grandpa was passing the farm down to me, and they just let it waste away thinking it was not their problem. And they very well could have been the source of my villain origin story. At least I could find some comfort in the homemade cookies I found in the trash, after which I did wander aimlessly around a little bit before remembering it was the second day of spring, so I needed to head on over to the beach. With my new fishing rod, I caught exactly 1 fish before I decided my time was better spent elsewhere as I tried to forage around the town more. Satisfied with my forage for the day, of which I couldn't sell a single thing, I headed to bed, but not before I checked my luck because I don't know if you know this or if anyone has told you this before, but contrary to popular belief, the best time to check your luck is in fact at the end of the day. Just kidding. With all the items I found in the trash, I knew the spirits were on my side, so I just had to confirm it. For the second night in a row, I struggled to make it safely into my bed, running into that oddly placed lamp. To remedy this, I moved the bed to its optimal position and then finally tucked myself in for the night. In the process, I gained level 1 in foraging, 1 level down, only 9 more to go. Unlike yesterday, on this beautiful rainy day, I checked the fortune at the start of the day, shaking things up by now. Since I found coal the other day, Clint was waiting outside my house without even the courtesy of a knock. So in retaliation, I ignored the quest he'd activated for me and instead headed over to my coop to feed my dear little money-making machines, chickens. Because yeah, it's day 3 and I already have some eggs. Only I can't do anything with them yet because not only do I only have 120 gold to my name, I also don't have the mayo machine recipe. You know what they say, when it rains, it pours. And it was quite literally pouring this day. With the rain pelting down, I decided there was no better activity than to forage. At that point, I was too weak to even attempt to try and catch a catfish, so I didn't even entertain the idea. Of course, in doing so, I passed by the community center, and I've got to say, it's not looking so fancy. I wonder whose job it will be to clean it all up. I just wonder. In preparation for my eventual cleanup of Pelican Town, I did the exact opposite of that and dug up some trash cans. I can only imagine digging through the trash would be at least 10 times more gross when it's raining. If I didn't stink before, there's no way I don't now. At least, I can find some comfort in picking up a decent amount of spring onions, which, of course, I won't be selling, so they'll be a somewhat useful source of energy early on, after which I headed back to the farm and got started on cleaning things up. When I was done with that, I introduced myself to the last of the Stardew villagers that I needed. Definitely not my personal best, don't put that on me. With that, I headed back home and went straight to bed. Unfortunately, it is another day of no profits. As day 4 rolled around, I quickly watered my crops, tended to my future chicken tenders, and filled my watering can while I was over there. The water source in the Meadowlands farm is criminally far away from my small crop field. Being the good Samaritan I am, I took one of my horseradishes that I totally could have sold and gave it to Linus, gaining 100 gold in the process, which, yes, is not a lot, but it did almost double my total gold. I did a bit of casual foraging and deforestation on my way to the beach. It's never too early in this game to start putting the moves on someone, but for some odd reason, Elliot seems to be avoiding me. It couldn't possibly be because I do smell like the trash I tried to loot on the way to his house. No, certainly not. So instead of just giving up and continuing on with my day, I waited outside his house when he finally decided to make an appearance. Of course, I had nothing to give him because he's quite a picky man, which, to be fair, is only one of the reasons I think he's so fancy in the first place. Only the finest duck feathers, lobsters, and pomegranates for my man. After such a riveting conversation with Elliot, I longingly looked at the fish smoker. Oh, how I wish I could get my hands on you. And then I guess my future husband and I were just so in sync, we headed to the same place without even planning it. Again, I took a look at something I so desperately wanted, the dehydrator, and settled for buying the seeds I'll eventually need for the community center instead. After planting those seeds, I finally decided it was worth my time to fish, so I headed to the beach. I really didn't catch anything exciting, but I guess it doesn't even really matter because it's not like I could sell it anyway. Once again, as I pass out for the night, I gain neither money nor levels. Isn't it great being fancy? At least on day 5, the mines finally opened up. Not only that, but I had my first harvest of the season, only like I've mentioned before, I won't be able to sell any of the fruit or vegetables in this case of my labor, so I made quick work of harvesting without bothering to replant anything because if you hadn't noticed, I'm broke. Instead of worrying about that, I headed to the mines. With my new rusty sword, I descended into the mines. I didn't make it too far down before I overexerted myself. I definitely should have brought more parsnips with me. Luckily, I found a horseradish on my way back, so I didn't have to trudge through the town on the brink of death. At least this gave me time to check the traveling cart, and oh look, there's a pomegranate, which just so happens to be one of Elliot's loved gifts, and it's even an item for the community center. But oh, I'm still broke. And so maybe a part of me did wish I had passed out in the mines, if only to keep me away from this painful reminder. I'm not yet fancy enough for Elliot and his luscious locks, but there's always tomorrow. I ended the day just aimlessly walking around town, digging through trash, looking for forage, really just talking to anyone who would listen. On the bright side, at the end of this unfortunate day, I did finally gain a level in farming, so so I am getting closer to unlocking some of those machines that I'm really looking forward to. The day's good luck doesn't have any effect on the fact my farm is looking desolate, and there's not much I can do about that right now, so I tended to my chickens and then headed straight back out to the mines. I wasn't happy with my progress yesterday, even if I did gain a mining level, but with my good luck today, I'm hoping I'll be able to make progress and slay 10 green slimes in the process. And around the middle of the day, I quickly headed over to Robin's to deliver her the stone she wanted. Even though she seems to sell an unlimited supply, things aren't adding up, but I'm happy to pocket the 200 gold. After a quick trip to the Adventurers Guild, I dug around the trash and tried my luck at Elliot's store. However, I didn't know how lucky I really was, since Elliot locked me out again. He really is playing hard to get. So I headed home and stashed my haul away in my chests, since, as you guessed it, I can't sell anything yet. With another good luck day, I watered my tiny patch of crops, and then finally got around to crafting my first furnace and scarecrow. I needed to protect what little crops I had. Otherwise, I'd have to give up my day job and dig in the trash for the rest of my life. Of course, I tended to my chickens and then started smelting my first copper bar. For the hell of it, I walked over to the traveling cart, even though I knew I wouldn't be able to afford much. Walking back empty-handed, I made sure Lewis did not feel forgotten on his birthday, giving him a topaz. On my way back, I fished a single sardine while I waited for Elliot to emerge. He won't be able to hide from me today. Luckily, I didn't have to wait long, so I rewarded him with a topaz as well. He said he liked the gift, but his heart did not grow any sizes that day. Then I tried to crack open some geodes, but I'm really starting to get limited by my tiny backpack size. Only at the rate I'm making money, I won't be able to afford any upgrades anytime soon. And so, with most of the day left, I headed up to the mountain lake to fish, bringing in a decent haul at the end of the night. In the process, I snagged level 2 in both foraging and fishing. At least some of my efforts are starting to pay off, even if it's not monetarily. On the 8th, it was a hard task, but I was willing to put in the work to water all 3 of my crops. Farmer of the year over here. After tending to my chickens, I cut down some trees and did a little bit of foraging before heading to Pierre's to buy some more parsnip seeds. To celebrate the fact my life wasn't totally unraveling before my eyes, I made sure to greet Elliot when he left his house, and it looks like he's finally starting to love me. After which, I planted my precious crops all before heading back out to put my life on the line at the mines. I made it to level 20 before heading back to the safety of my home for the day. I ended the night with mining level 2 and combat level 1. Day 9 was a rainy day, but it didn't look like luck was on my side. However, that might be a lie because I did in fact have 2 ancient seeds. So I put 1 in my inventory and packed the rest of the artifacts and minerals I had to donate to Gunther so I could get some free seeds as a reward. With these new crops in hand, I headed back home to plant them. And yes, you can judge me for the way I did end up planting them. It is in fact criminal, but I did fix that soon enough as I headed over to Pierre's to buy as many parsnips as I could afford. On the way back, I delivered a dandelion to Pam, and the fool ended up I did fix that soon enough as I headed over to Pierre's to buy as many parsnips as I could afford. On the way back, I delivered a dandelion to Pam, and the fool ended up giving me 120 gold for it. I once again headed home to plant my new batch of crops, and see, I told you I would make it better. Oh, okay. I might have made it look worse, but since I'm a self-identifying fancy farmer, I can say that that's what a fancy field of crops looks like. I did a little fishing in the forest, but I ended up getting way more trash than I would have liked, so I eventually made my way over to the town to fish instead, where I caught more fish than trash. With a full inventory and depleting energy, I humbly made my way back to the beach, finding this fine hat in the process. And then I briefly walked by Elliot's house. Do you think he can sense that I'm nearby? At the end of this day, I ended the night with a new fishing level. On day 10, I quickly tended to the farm before heading all the way up to the mines, where I very early on found my 3rd ancient seed on this save file. It's like this game knew I was fancy and rewarded me accordingly. On top of the decent day of mining, I managed to make it all the way down to level 35 before I decided to call it quits for the day. Before hitting the hay, I planted some of the carrot seeds I found in the mines and then safely secured farming level 2, where I can now craft the the mayo machine. Finally! Oh, how the tables are starting to turn. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. Day 11 started off not so fancy, as I had to make the long trek near my chicken coop just to fill up my watering can. After which, I continued to water my crops and finally made my first mayo machine. Wait, maybe things really are turning around, like I had originally thought. Not letting the high of the mayo machines get to my head, I skipped a cutscene, picked up Robin's axe, furthered my mayo empire, and then I promptly gave Robin her axe back so I could earn a little cash. With my new funds, I did notably enter town after 8 a.m., but not from the bus stop, so I once again delayed the community center cutscene from triggering, but it's okay, at least for today, as I picked up a help wanted quest for Clint. And then I wandered over to the beach looking for Elliot, only he was nowhere to be seen, so I headed back to Pierre's and oh, there's Elliot. Notably, we have one heart between the two of us. I'm kind of feeling like Leah better watch out at the flower dance, just saying. I headed back to the farm with my parsnip seeds in hand. After planting them, I continued my mayo production and then headed back to the mines. Having reached level 40, I went back home to the farm and turned the last couple of eggs I had stockpiled into mayo, ending the day with some profits finally. Woohoo! On the 12th, Marnie so kindly dropped off my cat Fancy Feast, and then I headed straight towards the coop to continue mayo production after harvesting the parsnips I can't sell. After watering my crops, I finally triggered the community center cutscene and am quick to investigate what's going on in this not so fancy building. But not before I spent some of my hard-earned gold on parsnip seeds in hopes I'll be able to bring up my farming level, which will allow me to unlock some of those fancy artisan machines. On my way back to plant those seeds, of course, I respectfully dug through some trash before stopping at Marnie's to buy another chicken. I made a quick detour to the beach in search of my Elliot. I meant Elliot, and he's just so kindly waiting for me at the dock. I kindly gifted him some freshly made mayo. He truly doesn't know how lucky he is, and then I was finally able to plant my parsnips, after which I petted my new chick and headed back to the mines. I made it down 5 more levels to level 45 and was able to stop by the saloon on my way home where I turned in that iron quest to Clint. However, I was too slow to actually cash in my ticket, unfortunately, so I took the money Clint gave me and then quickly brought in even more money for the night as my mayo profits rolled in. The next day, I harvested more parsnips, and yes, my field of crops was looking more cursed by the day. While I tended to the chickens and rest of my crops like the fancy farmer I am, I smelt some iron before cutting down a tree, which is all in preparation of the egg festival. I had to warm up somehow. Once the festival began, I glanced over all the items I can't really afford at the moment and opted to buy strawberry seeds instead. Yes, I know at the moment I have no way to sell the resulting strawberries, but I have faith in myself and you should too. I then proceeded to talk to everyone at the festival in order to better my friendship with the town. I don't have a lot to offer them physically, but my conversation will truly make up for that. I am fancy after all. After schmoozing the town, I wasted no time. Okay, to be fair, I did waste a little bit of time before starting the highly anticipated fancy egg hunt. How is this different from any other egg hunt, you ask? Well, I'm in it obviously. I won't keep you on the edge of your seat for very long. Of course, I crushed the competition in the hunt. I don't care if most of the participants were children, I deserve that win. High off my victory, I promptly headed back home to plant all my precious strawberry seeds. And while I was almost broke before I headed to bed, my mayo production pulled through, so I had more than pennies to my very fancy name. On the 14th, I woke up to glorious rain, a fancy and free way to have someone else do some of my farming tasks for me. Of course, the rain can't tend to my loyal chicken tenders. I haven't reached auto petter level of fancy yet, so I made sure they knew I loved them before doing a quick little scavenge. After which, I headed over to the beach to place my crab pot, of which I unsurprisingly won't be able to sell the spoils from. At least, not without processing whatever unfortunate fish lands in my trap. Unfortunately, with nothing to offer Elliot, I quickly rushed past his humble shack before gathering all the supplies to complete the spring foraging bundle. One step closer to a fancy community. Since I'm already on a roll, I also completed the spring crops bundle as well. And then I ran into Lewis on my way back, and I'm kind of surprised he even recognizes my efforts, but it must be hard to ignore them when I'm so fancy. It is a nice change from Pierre taking all the credit for my work. I think I can get used to this. I then spent the rest of the day doing some boring chores, surely to make up for not having to water my crops from the rain, as I chopped down trees and expanded my chest storage. Nothing like ending the night learning about some sweet coleslaw before gaining level 3 in farming. Day 15 is another rainy day. Despite the rain, it seemed luck was not on my side, but that is debatable because I did get a letter from my fancy father with 500 gold. Evelyn tried to be a nice neighbor and gave me farming advice, but I kind of think she thinks I'm dumb, so maybe luck really isn't on my side today. Nevertheless, I harvested my parsnips and then did a forage run while checking the trash for any goodies. Even the fanciest of people can't pass up on nice, free things. Unless it's trash, I'll definitely pass on that. Again, despite luck not being fully on my side, I decided to brave the mines, taking some of my juicy leeks with me, all of which I did end up needing. I guess they are more useful in my stomach than collecting dust in a chest after all. And maybe I should have listened to all the bad luck signs and stayed home, because I made it to level 49 right before passing out. I woke up the next day with a large bill in my mailbox. Rude. Personally, I feel like someone passing out in the mines is more of a liability than something they should charge me for. Maybe I could sue. Pierre tried to poach some money off me by upselling fertilizer, of which he taunted me by saying, swing by and see if you can afford a few dozen boxes or so. Excuse me? But now I'm sort of feeling like maybe I should have gone the JoJo route. To blow off some steam, I went scavenging for salmon berries, all while secretly wishing I'd find a poisonous berry or two to give Pierre. Despite my better judgment, I bought more parsnip seeds for the experience, and just out of spite, I crafted a few fertilizers to show Pierre who's really the boss here. I headed back to foraging for those salmon berries before the day slipped away and it was time for bed. All my foraging paid off as I moved up to level 3. After a string of rain days, it had finally stopped pouring in the valley, so I had to hand water my crops, but not before continuing my mayo empire. Speaking of which, I had to go to Marnie's to buy some hay for those mayo makers, and suddenly they're not looking as profitable as I had imagined. It's just injustice after injustice in this game. Determined to find at least one villager in this town who doesn't think I'm dumb, I headed over to the beach, did a little bit of scavenging, refilled my crab pot, and then patiently waited outside Elliot's shack. And by patiently, I do mean I destroyed the ecosystem and depleted my energy. At least Elliot didn't seem to think I'm dumb, but I had nothing to offer him. I think he would not like to receive the clay in my backpack, so I settled for friendly conversation. Our relationship is a slow burn. I spent the rest of the day wandering around town, picking up anything I saw as valuable along the way before deciding it was time for another community center run. I stuffed my small pockets with as many donations as possible and was able to complete the crab pot bundle, which I was rewarded with, oh, more crab pots. How fun. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'd like more pots to have a better chance at getting a lobster for Elliot, but it's just the principle of things. I have fancy standards, okay? I finished up by donating some eggs, fish, and forage before heading back home to do another trip. Again, I didn't finish any more bundles, but I did end the day with some mayo profits. It's back to the farming grind on the 18th. Harvest and water my crops, pet my chicken tenders, and then promptly proceed to make mayo. Yes, my field is still very questionable, but we don't need to talk about that. I guess now thinking about it, I could have been selling my copper and iron bars, but I did know I'd be needing those for upcoming crafting recipes, so I held on to them regardless. Though the lack of backpack space was ironically weighing me down at this point. On my way to Clint's, I checked my newly laid crab pots and was excited to see I had managed to trap a lobster for my man Elliot. No longer did I just have to talk to him, I now could slowly bribe his love, in a fancy way of course. So obviously the first thing after catching the lobster was to locate Elliot and gift it to him. I also had a request from Elliot, so I first gave him his quartz before forking over the lobster. I'm happy to see that he does appreciate my efforts, and I may be getting a little hopeful we'll be able to dance together at the flower dance. Even though we just have 2 hearts, a girl can dream. I spent the ticket Elliot gave me and I got a peach sapling. A pomegranate would have been preferred, but maybe that would have been a little too perfect. perfect. I then cracked some geodes, donated to the museum, and then repeated this cycle because I practically have holes for pockets. Since the salmonberry season was still ripe for the picking, I shifted gears and collected as many of them as I could before turning in for the night. The next morning was a big harvest day. Even though I won't be able to roll in the riches of my harvest just yet, I knew my moment was yet to come. I've got to admit, I am a sucker for delayed gratification. So by now, I have established a well-oiled routine. Each morning, I'll harvest and water my crops, replant any open spaces, and then tend to my animals. Since it was Friday, I took a look at the traveling cart, and you know I'm moving up in the world because I bought some sashimi. But I do think I bought it by accident, but we're gonna pretend it was intentional. It was a morale booster, if you will. Of course, I wanted to share my excitement with Elliot, and since we're such good friends now with 2 hearts, I didn't have to wait around for him to leave his shack like some commoner. Instead, I barged into his house and planted some seeds of romance. I am a multifaceted farmer, if you didn't know. Speaking of romance, a lobster was patiently waiting in the crab pot, so I quickly gifted it to Elliot, and his heart grew even bigger. We're now at 3 hearts, and the flower dance is becoming more and more a possibility. I can almost taste it. After finishing up the rest of my farming chores, I finally headed back to the mines after having taken a decent break. I got to level 53, but decided to leave before getting any further, taking with me as much loot as I could fit in my small pockets. I ended this day with farming level 4, which meant I could finally craft some preserve jars and ramp up my money-making tactics. Before I did just that, I tended to my humble farm, after which I was able to craft 4 preserve jars. Hold the applause. I started off trying to use my huge parsnip stash to fill the jars. With most of the day still ahead of me, I headed to the beach and talked to Elliot. I've already given him 2 gifts this week, but I was hoping by talking to him, I'd push him over the friendship edge into 4-heart territory. But I was not successful in doing so. So I put my attention elsewhere. I checked Clint's to see the price of coal and decided against buying any from him with his outrageous prices. He must think he's fancy or something, which is just unacceptable, by the way. Instead of using Clint as a supplier for my coal supply, I headed back to the mines, where luck must have been on my side because I made it to level 60. I ended that day with the usual mayo profits, but hopefully this number will only continue to increase with the help of my new preserve jars. Day 21 was a strawberry harvest day, and now I actually have a use for them. If only I had more than 4 preserve jars, though. I made sure to tell Elliot hello, and then I paid the bookseller a visit. But I'm broke if you didn't notice, and can't afford anything, so I just looked at all the books. Sadly, like I mentioned, I couldn't afford anything from the bookseller, so I decided to craft 1 more preserve jar instead. That will really stick it to the old man, don't tell me otherwise. Nevertheless, I headed back to the mines to get more coal, so I really can stick it to the bookseller with my preserve jar production. I ended my mine adventures at level 65. During the night, I reached level 5 in farming and chose Rancher to hopefully up my profits from my chicken guys. At the same time, I also snagged mining level 4 and combat level 3. The 22nd was spent doing my daily chores, which now included checking the crab pots for a lobster. Unfortunately for me, no lobster was caught this day, which meant the possibility of dancing with Elliot was slowly slipping through my fingers. Don't love to see that, but I'll still hold out hope. I mean, that's exactly what a character in Elliot's romance novel would do. Determined to make Elliot fall for me, I tried to search around town for something to give him, but I came up short, so I settled for gifting him one of my precious mayos. But our friendship stayed at 3 hearts. To lift up my spirits, I went to the mines to finish out the day. I made it to level 70 before heading back to the farm. Since I gifted Elliot one of my mayos, the profits weren't as good, but I've still got some hope left in me for those preserve jars. Oh yeah, when I step out of my house, I was greeted by the glorious sight of my preserve jars being finished. Now, don't get ahead of yourself. I did fill them up with parsnips, the typical starter crop, if you don't select the Meadowlands farm, that is. So I was not expecting to be suddenly flooded with cash, but I've got that Mr. Krabs mentality. Money, money, money. Lewis also sent a friendly reminder about the flower dance, and I'm hoping my recent good luck will make it so I trap one of those juicy lobsters in my crab pots. Imagine how fancy I'll be with my man Elliot at the flower dance. I simply simply need to assert my fanciness to the community, and yes, it's a need, not a want. And on the topic of preserve jars, yes, I did fill them with more parsnips. I have an overabundance of them, and I was conducting an experiment, okay? Or at least that's what I told myself. Despite my newly crafted preserve jars, the mayo production continued. You can't forget about your roots, even if you're fancy. I did buy some more parsnips, which could be a questionable choice, but as you can see, I'm still pretty poor and haven't upgraded my backpack yet, so I don't think I can quite ball out on some crops just yet. To continue the slight disappointment, I met with the most unfortunate sight: rubbish-filled crab pots, which means my man will have to dance with another at the flower dance. Not even Grandpa's death hurt this much. I was so close, yet so far away. Regardless, I still paid Elliot a visit and gave him a topaz. Not that his heart grew any bigger. He's playing hard to get, and don't you worry, Elliot, I will get you in the end. That's both a promise and a threat. To get my mind off this disappointing reality, I headed to the mines, trying to descend as far down as possible. I'm a sucker for completing quests, so while my time might have been better spent elsewhere at this point, like building more preserve jars, that's not the mentality of a fancy person. Okay, get it right. A fancy person would simply do what they want, which is exactly what I ended up doing. Unfortunately for me, I made it all the way down to level 80 before heading home for the night. And yeah, I made a pretty penny this day. Unsurprisingly, the next day was the flower dance. And I had to think to myself, should I even attend if I can't dance with Elliot? I mean, what is more unfancy than attending a dance and being rejected? If only I had some liquid courage, something a little stronger than the water from my farm. I soldiered on despite this huge blow to the ego. To add insult to injury, I perused Pierre's stall, and I couldn't in good conscience buy anything since I hardly had any money to my name. Trying to bring my spirits up, it is a holiday after all, I made sure to talk to everyone at the dance, even Elliot, before watching from the sidelines as every other bachelorette had someone to dance the night away with. I'm not crying, you're the one crying. To add even more insult to injury, it said that was fun, as if to rub my unfortunate circumstances in my face. At least I had my mayo production to return home to. I guess that's a silver lining or whatever. Oh yeah, I did also sell some strawberry preserves, but the profits weren't nearly as good as I had hoped. So that was my experiment and it failed. Might as well take as many gut punches as possible in one day. At least to lighten the mood, another round of strawberries were ready to harvest the next morning, and the bookseller visited again. This time, I was actually able to afford a book. Obviously, I did not cave in and buy anything, but I just had to let the bookseller know I could afford at least 2 of his books. I just simply didn't want to purchase one. After this visit, I headed over to Clint's for a quick museum donation run, or a couple quick runs to be exact. Clearly with the most optimized way of thinking, I paid Robin a visit to see how many shops I could visit in one day, and I commissioned her to build me a silo. My chicken tenders deserve it, and I won't hear otherwise. I continued my efforts to clean the outgrown farmland my grandpa gave me, and let's be clear, it didn't have to be this way. I had the potential to be a full-blown Nepo baby, but grandpa had other ideas. If he had planned for his death and actually had someone step in and care for the farm when I was younger, I wouldn't have had to start from scratch, and just think how fancy I would have been then. I would have been the talk of the town. Well, I probably am still the talk of the town now, but I wouldn't have had to do anything for success to come my way. And that's something I have to come to terms with. Because grandpa failed me, I crafted more preserve jars and filled them with even more parsnips. At the end of the day, I reached level 4 in foraging. I woke up to not only the tranquil sounds of rain, but also the sound of an achievement. Greenhorn for making 15k. I've still yet to get another lobster in my crab pots, and I almost forget about visiting Elliot because of it. I quickly came to my senses, but he slept me out. The audacity. Way to put salt in my wound after not dancing together. I mean, I questioned if we even had enough hearts for me to enter his house after that. So instead of speaking to Elliot, I rushed over to the mines, trying to accumulate some more supplies for my preserve empire and complete a quest for Clint. And wow, what a sight! A single preserve jar finished when I got back to my farm. Can't wait to have this rain turned into money just because of that. My efforts in the mines made me level up. I chose the miner profession since I can't sell any of the gems, for obvious reasons. On the 27th, I got a letter from my dad with 500 gold from my grandpa. I won't say no to free money. I mean, I quite literally can't say no. And yes, I watered all my strawberries like a complete fool. It's okay, you can laugh at me. I bet grandpa sure is. I took some of my mystery boxes to Clint and donated what I could before heading to the beach where, to no surprise, there's no lobster waiting for me. But at least Elliot let me into his house to talk. And so, when I got back home, I crafted one tapper. I know you're probably so proud of me. I've got the future on the brain, trying to get supplies for kegs at the ready. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful as I continued to clear my farm. But I did end the day with level 6 farming, and for some reason, I was really excited to unlock the cheese press, even though I don't have a barn, much less a cow. Anyway, on the last day of spring, there's not too many chores to take care of, so I walked over to Elliot's to celebrate the end of our first season together. And by doing so, we finally reached 4 hearts, only 4 days too late. Regardless, I celebrated this victory by buying the fish smoker recipe and depleting most of my funds. With this new recipe, I fished around the ocean and mines for the jelly I needed in order to craft the smoker. But since I didn't have enough hardwood to craft it, I instead stockpiled more sprinklers so I wouldn't have to water as many crops in the summer. And then I rummaged through my chests and donated what I could to the community center to start the summer season off fresh. In doing so, I was able to complete the Adventurer's Bundle. I'd say the spring season was a slow start, but they always say slow and steady wins the race, and I have a feeling that's what's gonna happen here. And if it isn't what ends up happening, I simply don't know what you're talking about. Day 29 was the start of the summer season, and luckily I had some summer seeds from donating to the museum, but not enough to supply my newly crafted sprinklers with enough crops, so after planting what little seeds I did have, I headed over to Pierre's. Pierre, someone who I have diagnosed as a non-fancy member of society, was not someone I wanted to see this early in the morning, but even as a fancy farmer, sacrifices must be made. I picked out some seeds I now will need for the community center, and then I spent the rest of my gold on melon seeds. Of course, I could not head into town and not check the trash bins and my crab pots, both of which were filled with trash. I had to say hello to my man Elliot. Starting off the season by seeing me would surely be the highlight to his summer. Even if it is just the first day of the season, it's an effect fancy people have on others. Take my word for it. I spent the remainder of the day laying down the rest of my sprinklers and planting my crops. I crafted another scarecrow just in case. To be honest, I never know how far these things cover, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I ended the night cutting down anything in sight, I mean any tree in sight, and ended the night with my typical hauls. On the 30th day, it was so glorious. I didn't have to water my crops, and because of my self-imposed fancy rule of not being able to sell anything that wasn't processed, I had stockpiled a lot of crops, even if they're not high in value, which made me feel less guilty about not planting more. Of course, I had to give Fancy Feast a good pet before heading to the beach to fish. My small backpack size had no effect on my fishing efforts, since I had a strategically placed chest near my crab pots. I finished a quest for Pam and pocketed a little bit of gold. Even though I didn't have all the summer forage, I did make a quick stop at the community center on my way to the mountains to fish. Now, I can't say I'm not limited by my tiny backpack size in the mountains, but they do say size doesn't matter, so I won't let it get me down. I ended the night by being hit by an earthquake. Clearly, Mother Nature did not get the memo that I'm fancy and such things should not happen to me, or maybe it's Grandpa retaliating for my recent slander. Hey, he deserved it. My fishing efforts paid off as I gained level 4. As you can see, I'm always improving as a member of the Stardew Society. The next day, I tended to my preserve jars, and I had the better sense to fill these ones with strawberries. I also received a questionable letter from Lewis. He knows I'm fancy, and he has been pretty respectful, but he thinks I'm some errand person for him to use. Maybe I won't be so discreet, and that's on him, not me. I then crafted a recycling machine so I could turn all the trash I've been getting into something useful. Of course, the mayo production pipeline was still going strong. I finally made the financial decision to upgrade my pickaxe since I needed to get my fancy fingers on some more hardwood, which I guess I could have been trying to source from the mines. But hey, hindsight is 2020 and I'm nearly blind. On my way back from Clint's, I finished up the summer forage bundle, took my seeds, and headed to the mines to source more materials. I almost is the key word, forgot about my love Elliot, so after hours sweating up a storm in the mines, I trudged over to the beach to replenish my crab pots. Still no lobsters in sight. Pomegranates might come in season before I get another lobster at this rate. I ended the night with combat level 4. The 32nd was a momentous day, as I had enough profits to choose what cave I wanted, mushrooms or bats. I chose mushrooms for the dehydrator. Of course, I did think about the bats for my man Elliot, but let's face it, he's not as important as getting my farming business off the ground, so he can wait. I paid the cave a visit and promptly moved the dehydrator to a more desirable and accessible location, and started dehydrating some of the salmon berries I foraged last season. I also continued recycling some of my trash. While I may be destroying the ecosystem by chopping down as many trees as possible, you can't say I'm not helping the environment because I do recycle. On my way to donate a scroll to the museum, I picked up a quest for Maru, but more importantly, I also upgraded my backpack. Thank you. This has indeed been a long time in the making. With my new backpack space, I fished up a storm at both the beach and mountains, spending the rest of my day there. Waking up the next day, my copper axe was ready, but on top of that, so was my first batch of dehydrated salmon berries. I did another little fancy experiment and put some strawberries in the dehydrator. We'll see how that turns out tomorrow. I checked the traveling cart, which I have been doing most Fridays and Sundays, but like usual, there was nothing of interest there. So I decided to give Elliot my attention. I'm sure he missed me dearly, as it had been a couple days since I had talked to him. Since I had no lobsters to give him, I just gave him a rainbow shell I found at the beach, but he didn't seem to like or love it. On my way back from Elliot's, I picked up my axe while simultaneously dropping off my pickaxe for the same copper upgrade. And then I finally got down to cutting some stumps so I could collect enough hardwood to craft a fish smoker. And boy, did I have a lot of fish to smoke. Things are starting to feel real fancy up in here. Not only do I have sprinklers, but I have some preserves, mayo machines, a dehydrator, and now a smoker. Get on my level. Scratch that, I actually have 2 fish smokers, so I doubt you could even reach these levels of fancy. I'd like to see you try. The rest of the day was spent clearing the farm, smoking fish, tending to my preserve jars, and turning wood into coal, all of which allowed me to end the day with record profits. I'm not the only one who's noticing how well I've been doing recently because the Stardew Tribune wants to feature me. They better pay me for that, I'm just saying. I mean, if they're gonna make money about my fancy success story, then I should as well. Anyway, I checked my mushroom cave and picked up my first batch of mushrooms. But I didn't have enough of them to dehydrate them yet, so I'll just have to stick to dehydrating fruit. On my way to the beach, I picked up a quest for Harvey, and still I have not got any lobsters. I must have been really lucky at the start of my save. Or maybe the lobsters can smell Elliot from the ocean and are steering clear. I'm not quite sure which is true. In any case, maybe he knows what I'm thinking because I found him near Leah's house and he wouldn't talk to me. His loss. So I just went and cut down more of the ecosystem. With enough wood collected, I repaired the bridge near Elliot's and then tried to hunt down Harvey, but he was not having it, so he will go without his earth crystal for another day. I ended the day gaining level 5 in fishing, where I picked fisher as my profession since I can smoke fish for profit. I also reached level 5 in foraging and chose gatherer for any fruits and mushrooms. And yeah, I got a little too happy about how much the dehydrated strawberries sold for, way better than those salmon berries. Another successful experiment completed. And yes, I know I could have just checked the wiki, but let's be honest, where's the fun in that? There is none, thank you very much. The next day was finally a rainy day. I feel like there's been a drought in the valley. Not that I even need to rely on the rain anymore because I have sprinklers. Regardless, I think I've been conditioned to associate rainy days with going going to the mines. So I finally did find Harvey, gave him his earth crystal, picked up my copper pickaxe, and then headed to the mines to gather more resources for both crafting and smoking. And so this day passes by in the blink of an eye. On the 36th, I'm greeted by Emily at my door. I can now use her sewing machine, but I'll let you in on a spoiler. I never do use it. I was also greeted with a letter from my dad. I've been getting used to his letters filled with money, but I'm not quite so lucky to get another 500 gold. I guess I'll just have to earn my own money then. So rude. In the meantime, I checked my mushroom cave and had enough mushrooms to start my dehydrating efforts. I quickly popped into Marnie's only for her not to be there. No surprise. I redeemed one of my prize tickets, picked up a quest, and then gave Marnie both the radish she was looking for and a gift. Soon Lewis's underwear will be mine. That admittedly is a weird flex, but you know, we work with what we have. Since I did have a flounder on hand, I quickly scurried over to Clint and finished his help wanted quest while also breaking a few geodes open while I was there. I headed over to the beach and there was still no lobster. I'm starting to think they've gone extinct, but I guess it's okay since Elliot wasn't home anyway. So instead of heading back to the farm, I used one of my newly acquired totems and warped to the mines, trying to get more coal. I only ended up getting 12 before it was time for me to go to bed, but I did end the day with a decent chunk of change for my standards. Day 37, I woke up to a letter from Lewis, and he's out here appreciating me for my efforts again. I can really get used to receiving 500 gold in the mail every day. This is the fancy way of life after all. After completing some farm chores, I once again hoped to catch Marnie at her house, but yet again, I'm unlucky in that department. And my bad luck seemed to continue as my crab pot still remained lobsterless. I picked up another help wanted quest, gave Lewis a gift, and then found Marnie hanging out with most of the other women in town. After which, I was dumb and headed to Robin's even though I just saw her at Pierre's. That clearly had thrown me off my game as I then went into the spa to replenish my energy. With a newly restored energy bar, I headed over to the mines to gather more coal. I ended up spending quite a bit of time in the mines, so much so, I rushed to get back to the farm to be able to throw my mayo preserves and smoked fish in the shipping bin before passing out. Now that I'm making better money each day, I don't want to miss out on those fancy profits. Once again, I was greeted with a letter in my mailbox. It was from Lewis, reminding me of the luau. Fortunately for the valley, I haven't managed to get my hands on his underpants quite yet, so I'll just stick with the tried and true gold stork crop so he has nothing to worry about for now. Before heading to Robin's, I did a bit of foraging and tree chopping to pass the time. When she finally opened her doors at 9 a.m., I went straight to Demetrius and gave him a rainbow trout because I've been struck with the dumb again and had misread his help wanted quest. I guess that quest isn't gonna be completed now. Oh well. Regardless, I then went over to Robin and upgraded my coop. At this point, my crab pots have not been so good to me, so I'll need the upgraded coop for fancy ducks and their duck feathers for Elliot and also for some duck mayo production. Of course, I crafted a soul bee house. I know the number of machines I have is getting quite out of hand, and yeah, I know I'm crafting them at an alarming rate. How will I ever fit them all on my farm? I certainly don't know at this point. I switched things up a little and headed to the mountains to fish for some more profitable fish. I ended up catching a sturgeon, so I headed to the community center to donate it, completing the lake fish bundle. At the end of the day, I was visited by a fairy, which I was not mad about, but if she's going to make some of my crops finish growing, I don't know why she doesn't finish the job and do it for each and every crop. Like, if you're gonna do something, do it right. The next day was the luau that Lewis warned us about, so I quickly harvested my first batch of ancient fruit, tended to my farm, my animals, and my machines. I even had some time before the festival to upgrade some of my sprinklers before taking my gold star melon to the beach. At the luau, I made sure to talk to everyone before we ate the soup. I wanted everyone to know if things turned out good, it was because of me and my fancy farming techniques, obviously, but if it turned out bad, it was because of Pierre, which should be a no-brainer. And yet, it's another festival I longingly look at items I can now afford, but shouldn't actually buy because this fancy farmer needs to be financially responsible. I've got chickens and a cat to care for after all. It seemed like my melon edition was a success. The whole town will be talking about this for years to come. On day 40, I woke up to the cowpoke achievement. I am dominating this whole fancy farmer thing, and I truly do deserve to be rewarded for it. After attending to the usual farm happenings, I made a visit to the traveling cart, where I picked up a sand fish and a maki roll, both of which I'll donate to the community center. On my way back from the traveling cart, I picked up all the shells on the beach, and still no lobster. If this keeps up, Elliot is doomed to stay in the friend zone forever. And that does not seem to be a very fancy place to be in. For him, not me. I then ran over to Clint's where I commissioned him to upgrade my pickaxe, and then had him open some of my geodes for me since I am but a weak girl in need of a strong man to open up my rocks. I donated what I could to the museum and disregarded any rewards for the time being. On my way back, I made a split-second decision to buy some more coal and then picked up another Help Wanted quest for the wizard. I donated the items I got from the traveling cart and then got back to tending my farm. I crafted another quality sprinkler and planted some of my mystery flower seeds that I had accumulated. The 41st was a rainy day and the spirits were happy. Robin informed me that my coop had been upgraded and it was finally time to add a duck to the Mayo producer lineup. While waiting for Marnie's to open, I checked my crab pots and was not surprised to see no lobsters. I did catch sight of the ominous Rain Man who sells the mermaid pendant. I just walked by and said nothing because I do want to be on his radar. Elliot will be mine by the end of these 100 days, mark my word. Speaking of Elliot, we have 5 hearts together and are getting close to being boyfriend and girlfriend. Since I've been a bad friend and haven't been as diligent about giving him things, I gave him one of the shells I collected, and then I headed on over to Marnie's where I adopted 3 new ducks. Now it's just a race against time. Will my crab pot supply me with lobsters before my ducks grow up and produce feathers? I made sure each duck knew I loved them before heading out to the mines for more coal yet again. Making it home just in time, I reached level 7 in farming and 5 in combat, opting to go with the fighter profession. I'm welcomed bright and early to the requests of an alcoholic. Pam needs her pale ale, but she'll have to wait since I don't even have one single keg to my name. I then went to Marnie's, and since we're now besties after the luau, I'm able to go into her bedroom and pick up Lewis's dirty underwear. I don't know why Marnie didn't either pick them up or tell Lewis about them, but I guess Marnie does run a barn, so maybe she has the same health standards in the barn as in her house. Hey, I'm not here to judge, I'm just here to be fancy. Wanting the money from Lewis's quest, I quickly headed over to his house and handed him his underwear back, but I did make sure to do it outside in public for all to see. In order to increase my lobster probability, I bought another crab pot, but before I placed it down, I did some fishing at the dock. I almost forgot about my pickaxe, so I hurried over to Clint's to pick it up while also picking up a quest for Clint from the Help Wanted section. With the new pickaxe, I headed directly to the mines to advance further down. I made it to level 85 before heading back up to the snowy floors in search of more coal. I ended the night with mining level 6. On the 43rd day, I conducted business as usual, taking some time to gather the items I had ready to donate to the community center. By doing this, I was able to finish the summer crop bundle and the blacksmith's bundle while also making progress on a few others. I rushed over to the river to fish the night away, or at least some of the night. I remembered I had an open quest for Clint, so I grabbed the ruby he wanted and gave it to him at the saloon before calling it a night, making a decent amount of money from one ancient fruit jelly. The 44th was a green rain day and everything was out of sorts. I got my first letter from Gus, and he told me most people will be at the saloon. I tended to the farm and then went around town using my scythe on everything in sight. I came across a strange man in a yellow suit, and honestly, I wish someone had thought to give me one because they look downright fancy. I did end up making my way to the saloon to check in on everyone, and I'm just left wondering why they would leave their houses in the first place. At least I was able to give Penny the pike she wanted. I headed towards the beach, and there really must have been something in the green rain because I finally got my lobster. After such a long wait, Elliot will finally be receiving a fancy gift for once. I visited the mariner, and he didn't seem to be affected at all by the green rain, but then again, he did seem kind of prejudiced against me, all because I'm technically single. Foolishly, I headed back to the saloon and tried to give Elliot that lobster, but the green rain had given him some brain rot, so he couldn't actually accept my gift. I ended the day fishing before heading to bed, where I gained another level in foraging. Demetrius sent me a gift in the mail the next day, and it just so happened to be the shell needed for his bundle at the community center. How convenient. That right there is the power of being a fancy member of the community. Giving the community center a little bit more focus, I stopped at Robin's so she could start building me a barn, and then I shifted focus back to the mines, trying to get further down. I managed to get to level 95 before calling it for the night. Profits didn't rain down on me like that green rain from the other day because I didn't have enough time to do my nightly restock of the preserves, smoker, and mayo machines. This day, I had quite a bit of farm chores to attend to since I didn't get to them last night like I usually would. With my ducks fully grown, they've started producing eggs, which means hopefully soon they'll be cranking out those feathers. Well, one can only hope. I headed over to Clint's, had him crack open geodes for me, and then donated all my findings to the museum. I was finally able to give Elliot the lobster I caught, so I took a break from donating to Gunther to head over to Elliot's, only he was not there waiting for me. Talk about rude. By now I knew exactly where to find him, gifting him the lobster and gaining another heart in the process. After which, I went straight back to business and gave my axe to Clint to be upgraded and finished donating the rest of my artifacts. I even splurged on an ice cream. I know, so fancy. And then I redeemed my prize ticket and was given 3 mystery boxes, so I headed straight to Clint's for him to open them up for me. With all my new treasure in my medium pockets, I directed my attention to the mines and was able to get to level 100. I ended the night with a decent amount of profits. I can sense a backpack upgrade in my future. The 47th was another rain day, and it just so happened that I had good luck on this day, so I gathered some things to donate to the community center. On the way over to the community center, I stopped at the traveling cart and bought a catfish so I wouldn't have to worry about catching it in the fall. I was able to complete the geologist bundle, which meant I've completed all the boiler room bundles, so the minecarts will finally be repaired by the mysterious magic of the Junimos. I also completed the exotic foraging bundle while I was there. Even with my good luck, there's no more lobsters in my crab pots. I did a little bit of fishing before paying my man a visit. He serenaded me on the piano. See, I knew he was fancy. We'll make for the most fancy duo in all of Stardew. After my time with Elliot, I went to the community center to donate some of my fish I caught at the beach. By doing this, I was able to complete the ocean fish bundle. Luck really was on my side since I completed 3 bundles in total. To celebrate, I spent most of my time fishing in the river. At the end of this day, not only do the Junimos fix the minecarts, but I also reached level 6 in fishing. The 48th day started off with a lot of notifications. My axe was ready, I got a quest in the mail from Demetrius, and the annual trout derby had begun. Before I attended to any of those things, I headed over to Marnie's and purchased 2 cows for my barn. Since I was in the area, I scoped the trout derby out and decided to partake, catching a single rainbow trout on my first try. Being this fancy really just does come naturally to me. I didn't fish for too long though, collecting a tent kit before picking up my steel axe. Unfortunately, I did not have enough funds to upgrade anything else, so I accepted another quest for Demetrius and bought some coffee. It truly can be so painful to walk at normal speed in this game, and the coffee certainly is a bit fancy. With the coffee in full effect, I spent the rest of the day slugging through the mines. I made it to level 110 before calling it quits for the night, but I didn't go to bed straight away since I did forget all about my new cheesemakers. I mean my cows. I gave them some love and hay before hitting the hay myself. Willie tried to get me to spend my money at his shop bright and early the next day, but I still needed to upgrade my backpack one final time, so he needs to learn to stay in his lane and read the room. Please ignore the decayed fences on my farm. I'm fancy, I swear. This is a judgmental free zone on my farm. Since it's Sunday, I popped over to the traveling cart and made sure to buy a rare seed so I could get a star drop at the end of fall. Since the trout derby was still going on, I headed over to the river to continue what I started yesterday. And then I kind of abandoned that idea. It wasn't making me feel fancy enough, so I went over to the beach. No lobsters, but I did catch a few fish, including a puffer fish, before directing my attention to the secret woods, which I am now able to access. I caught the wood skip and then promptly left to once again partake, or at least try to, in the trout derby. I got a bucket hat as a reward and finally switched out my hat wear. I was getting so many rewards and fish, it was hard to decide what to keep in my pockets. I really need that backpack upgrade right about now. With the profits that I earned from the end of this day, it looks like a new backpack upgrade just might be in my future. Clearly, I was a bit excited about my money prospects, but the normal boring chores of the farm had to come first. And look, I got my first duck feather. Elliot is going to be putty in my hands. I had upgrading my barn on my mind, but I was short some supplies. So I set out and cut down some trees for the needed wood, but then I decided for some reason to buy the stones I needed. In the process, I spent so much I didn't actually have enough money anymore for the upgrade. That was not supposed to happen, but I soldiered on, okay? I went back to my farm, picked up my ancient fruit preserves, and then unfortunately had to sell my goods to Pierre. I tried to avoid him at all costs, but this was important, so you should understand. With enough funds, once again, I headed back to Robin's and finally got that barn upgrade. After which, I plunged into the mines. And yes, somehow I still have some salmon berries left over, but I didn't get to use them all before giving up in the mines so that I could give Elliot his duck feather. Caught him at the perfect time as I'm slowly getting closer and closer to officially being able to call Elliot mine. For yet another day, I headed over to the community center and completed the specialty fish bundle. Since I was already helping the community, I made sure to give Emily the jade she wanted before turning in for the night. On the 51st, I ignored the sad state of my farm in order to chop down some trees where I found these cool sunglasses. I think I am reaching peak fancy fashion if I do say so myself. On my way into town, I picked up a help wanted quest for Jody. Since I can easily complete it, I backtracked to the farm so I could pick up that frozen tear. Jody gave me a prize ticket, so I wasted no time in redeeming it for a star drop tea. And then, as you can imagine, I wasted no time giving Elliot the tea, which turned out to be enough to push him out of the friend zone. With 8 hearts, I then wasted no time going to Pierre's to purchase a bouquet. I needed to reel in Elliot before he can try and scurry out of my clutches. Elliot, of course, accepted the bouquet, and as my luck had it, I promptly found a lobster in my crab pots. Today was all about my man Elliot, and I can't even be mad at it. I mean, he's just so fancy, so every day really should be about him. Or really, it should be about me now that I think about it. After spending time with my now boyfriend, I tried to find Demetrius, but he was out of office, so I directed my attention towards the mines instead. And as if the day couldn't get any better, I finally reached the bottom of the mines and was greeted by the skull key. To keep up the high achieving trend of the day, I ended the night with mining level 7 and combat level 6. Pierre didn't seem to get the memo that Elliot and I were already dating since he sent a letter about his bouquets in the mail the next day. He's just so out of touch, which is why it's also best to ignore whatever he says anyway. I was charged for passing out on my farm, which is totally my prerogative. I mean, I just had one of the best days of my life. I think I'm entitled to passing out. As it seems, Elliot was so inspired by me, he finally finished writing his romance novel. Of course, I need to hear him read it out loud. I just hope it's not based on our love life and that it's not a smut book. But even the fancy can have their flaws. To celebrate all the success in my life, I purchased a goat, and it's a little awkward to interrupt Lewis and Marnie's little date, but I've got some important things to focus on. I headed over to the library to support my man and his new book, and whoa, my heart is fluttering. He dedicated his smut to me. How romantic. Having had such an eventful day, I went back to the farm to clean up the place and tended to some more money-making chores before falling into a dreamful sleep about Elliot. I woke up to yet another request from the town. Luckily for George, I can't sell my crops raw, so I had plenty of peppers for him at the ready. Once again, I had decided it was time for another community center run, so I gathered my donations and was able to complete the quality crop bundle and the field research bundle. Woo! I got a preserve jar as a reward, and I'm totally not complaining. I headed over to Clint's to open some geodes and mystery boxes. I made a few donations to Gunther before giving George the hot pepper he requested. Again, I tried to give Demetrius the melon he wanted, but he wasn't at his house, so I better spend my time in the mines. I finally came to my senses and removed the rock blocking me from the dwarf. Poor guy was all alone. Of course, because I did not have all my senses, I hadn't taken the dwarf translation guide as a reward for donating all the scrolls to the museum. So unlocking him might have been a little bit pointless, but you didn't hear from me. After spending time in the mine slaying red slimes like Lewis requested, I tried to find the man in question, but it was already too late in the evening by the time I surfaced. Before going to bed, I made sure to craft a cheese machine so I could start up my cheese production since my cows aren't babies anymore. They grow up so fast. On top of ramping up production, I reached level 8 in farming, which meant I had finally unlocked kegs. There's really no stopping me now. Well, maybe my lack of resources will stop me, but I don't want to talk about that. The 54th day greeted me with rain, and yeah, I was right. I only had the resources to craft one keg. Every big fancy business starts out small, unless nepotism is involved, of course, and like I've mentioned before, that's not the case here, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm still salty about that, but while I'm at it, I also crafted another tapper so I could at least get some more sap, but you will not see an insane level of production going on here anytime soon. I want to be fancy. Well, I mean, I am fancy, but I also want to have some fun, so take that as you will. I've been on a streak of being a good neighbor, so I decided to switch things up and refuse to pick up Willie's help wanted request. However, I was still a good person, so I was finally able to track down Demetrius and give him his melon. With some extra time on my hands, I crafted a lightning rod and then exerted my efforts clearing parts of the farm I never ventured to. In the process, I managed to reach level 7 foraging. And it seems like there's now a streak of rainy days as the second to last day of summer begins. I had some well-timed crafting foresight since I was able to get a battery from the rainy day yesterday. For a large portion of the day, I spent attending to my animals, machines, and cleaning up the farm. A train stopped by, so I decided to see what it was all about and get some supplies as a result. But surely that's a huge liability? I mean, I could have been impaled. I kind of just spent the rest of the day aimless, loitering around town and the beach, cleaning up some of my chests in the process. It's the last day of summer, which also means it's the dance of the moonlight jellies. Visiting the traveling cart, I bought another rare seed before taking use of the freshly repaired minecarts to go to the mines to source some coal. I made sure not to spend the entire night at the mines as I headed down to the beach to attend the festival. I made sure once again to talk to everyone so that they're reminded I'm fancy, after which I relaxed as I watched the moonlight jellies and got mentally ready for the start of fall. Overall, I would say I'm generally happy with my progress. As it usually goes with Stardew, the beginning is slow, but then once you get in the groove, things start to move faster, so I'm sure I'll start to reach all kinds of fancy in the fall. If I don't, the only respectable thing to do would be to burn this save and put Fancy Pixel Me out of their misery. I did craft some quality sprinklers after the moonlight jelly, so I wouldn't have to map out where to put any more basic sprinklers, but I did keep those basic sprinklers in use since they were already set up. I fear I must admit the basic sprinkler is just not fancy. I can't even, in good conscience, lie to you. I mean, the layout you have to have in order to have multiple basic sprinklers is atrocious, and it uses up way too much brain power. All around, it's just bad. And I'm sorry you had to see me like that, heavily using them. And I'll continue being sorry as I begrudgingly continue to use them. Find some comfort in the fact I'm not happy about it. Of course, I then planted as many crops as I could manage, making sure to plant my rare seeds as well. This ended up taking about the entire day to do so, and since my sprinklers were a little haphazard, I didn't manage to math out the entire amount of seeds I'd needed, so unfortunately I'll have to visit Pierre tomorrow in order to fully fill all the available sprinkler space. The second day of fall started off with some terrible luck, but I was determined not to let that bring me down. I tended to my animals and machines, doing all the fancy things required of me. And then when I walked into town, I was greeted by Lewis and Robin, introducing the special orders board, which I'm happy to have around for the rewards. I'm not going for perfection here, so I'm not worried about getting any specific order, at least not in these first 100 days. Naturally, after the cutscene was over, I picked up an order for lunch Linus and then did a quick check at the beach. And to my surprise, there was a lobster waiting for me. It's like an automated gift service when RPG is on my side because I plucked that lobster out of the pot and gave it straight to my man. He's hook, line, and sinkered, like a fool, a fancy fool, which is coincidentally what I kind of did after we said our goodbyes. I quickly fished up a tiger trout and then headed back to the beach to try my hand at catching some ocean fish. Willie came up behind me, and I personally think it's a little bit of a risky move on his end. He knows I'm dating Elliot, but the attention was getting to me and I let myself bask in it. Just don't tell Elliot, it's our little secret. I gave Pam a super cucumber she requested and then headed back to the farm to finish up the day, where I gained level 7 in fishing. On day 59, I got a request from Marnie, and it really seems like the entire town wants my help. I really do not understand how they got anything done without me, and that truly is the power of being fancy. Not that it's a particularly good thing, but me doing all these favors for everyone better come in handy one day. I paid Robin a visit and commissioned her to upgrade my house in preparation for my eventual marriage to Elliot. I've clearly got my priorities straight. I mean, I've become accustomed to the not yet fully upgraded backpack size, and to be honest, I'm not someone who minds a little bit of struggle. On my way back, I stopped at the community center and was able to complete the fall foraging bundle. After which, I went to visit Elliot, but he was not home, so I couldn't tell him the good news that I've upgraded our house. I guess I'll just let it be a surprise. A wedding gift, if you will. But then again, I'd rather lock Elliot down sooner than later, so I grabbed a lobster I had in storage and found him at the library. We're at 9 hearts. Our impending marriage is so close I can almost taste it. I went back to the farm and worked on that special orders task of collecting trash for Linus. My farm was the perfect spot for this, but I didn't end up getting all 20 items just yet. The very next day, I was greeted by both Robin pounding on my walls and the rain pelting down. I hurried over to the river on my farm and continued to fish out trash. My efforts were rewarded as I collected enough trash to satisfy Linus, so I went ahead and dropped those off to collect my rewards. 500 gold is a little less than I would have liked, but I don't even know where he gets his money from, so I guess I shouldn't even question it. I decided I helped the environment too much with my trash collecting activities, so I decided to make up for it by cutting down all the trees in sight. Once I was satisfied with the level of destruction inflicted, I gathered my prize ticket and redeemed a twin bed, which simply won't be big enough for me and Elliot. Lewis, you will pay for that because Elliot and I only deserve the finest. Since I was near the beach, I headed over to the docks to fish the rest of the night away, catching some juicy fish in the process. On my way to bed, I saw that my first batch of wine was done, and I don't know what possessed me to put a salmon berry in it, but I had my wits with me on this day because I decided to put ancient fruit in instead. To start the 61st, I attempted to dehydrate red mushrooms but was denied by the forces of nature. I guess such a thing would be too powerful and deadly for this world, so I settled for putting melons in instead. Linus paid back my kindness with the recipe for fiber seeds, and he also gave me the recipe for sashimi. What a guy. I placed my inadequate bed inside and then just kept my old twin bed next to it so Elliot can come over anytime and I'll be ready. And it does seem like he'll be ready as well. I took a golden quality duck feather to Elliot and it pushed us over the edge to finally reach 10 hearts. I can practically hear the wedding bells already. Oh, and I guess it was his birthday, so that might have helped things along as well. To be honest, sometimes Elliot says some out-of-pocket things, so I don't fully listen to him. But I am forced to listen as I leave his house, entering a cutscene. Elliot basically professed his undying love for me, and I did have to question if his book really is any good because he's just not very good at speaking. I guess what he says at the end of our date is kind of cute. Maybe I should marry him. In the meantime though, I completed the construction bundle, artisan bundle, the river fish bundle, and the night fishing bundle in the community center. And it just so happens I completed the fish tank. In celebration, I crafted one more keg and cheese machine because that's all a girl can really do when I don't have a forest full of tappers. The Junimos did their magic, and it seemed like the game was recognizing my fanciness as I got the moving up achievement. I hope the 62nd will be as eventful as the previous day, and it just so happens that it's raining, and you know what that means. I mean, Lewis had the right idea as he reminded me of the mermaid pendant first thing in the morning. Elliot sent me a letter to meet him, and little does he know I'm gonna propose to him before he can propose to me. Take that. Of course, marriage is was no reason to skip my farming duties, so I tended to those before I headed to the beach to buy that pendant. I wasted no time busting Elliot's door down to propose, and he seemed excited about marrying me. I'm a real catch, if I say so myself. And there's even an added perk for me. I won't have to religiously check my crab pots for lobsters, since Elliot is stuck with me forever, for better or worse, and I don't know which one it will be for him just quite yet. I had a quest from Demetrius to fish up some smallmouth bass, so I spent a little time doing that and tracked him down to get my reward. I then headed back to the farm to do some more chores before going to bed a little earlier than usual. I need my fancy beauty sleep after all. I need to look picture perfect for our special day. It's the start of a new week in my book, even if it's not the start of the Stardew week calendar-wise. So I cooked up a fried egg for the community center. Now, if you're wondering how I'm planning on finishing the community center, which I am planning on finishing within these 100 days, then that would be a good question because I've kind of been relying on luck. I did not set up my save file to guarantee the chance to finish in year 1, so despite all odds, I might not even be able to finish it anyway, but I do have hope. The sheer magnitude of my fancy energy will surely bless my save. I've been passively playing Stardew since 2016, so I do have faith in myself if all else fails. With that being said, I headed back to the mines to gather more resources. Clearly, at the end of the day, Fancy Feast did not get the memo that we sleep in the bed near the door. Monday was a rainy day, which I do know I've been pointing out every single rainy day so far, but in my defense, I'm so conditioned to the idea that a rainy day means you don't have to water your crops and can therefore go to the mines, that even after having sprinklers for over a month, I still have this habit. Oh well, Linus requested my services in order to find his basket. Don't worry, Linus, I've got your back. I sprinted my way over to Robin's to put in a request for a barn upgrade, and then I went around doing a little forage session, picking up a help wanted quest along the way. Speaking of quests, I also picked up a special order for the wizard. And speaking of my habits, I still tended to my crab pots, and look, there's a lobster. It does work out like that, doesn't it? Where what you need starts to appear more after you don't really need it anymore. I mean, yes, I could still give Elliot a lobster to get to 14 hearts, don't get me wrong, but I also have ducks, which are a lot closer to me. In the meantime, I picked up Linus's basket. I wasted no time giving it back to him, and then I tracked Caroline down to give her the anchovy she requested. She gave me a prize ticket that I made sure to redeem since I knew some preserve jars would be waiting for me. To end the day, I blew off some steam by cleaning up the unused parts of my farm, which seems to be a never-ending task these days. The 65th day of my time on this humble save was my wedding to my man Elliot. And boy, do I have to say, not only do I look cool, but I look fancy. And I guess Elliot does too. Instead of congratulating me on my nuptials, Lewis took a different approach and reminded me of the fair that would be happening in a week. Which, to be fair, is probably a good thing that he reminded me since I kind of forgot all about it. I navigated to the mines to look for that prismatic jelly and picked up some coal along the way. It didn't take long for the rainbow slime to show up, so I was quickly done with that special order. And oh, I spotted Linus bathing in the mountain lake, and I really feel like I should not be seeing that, so I headed back into the mines and took the back exit. I gave the prismatic jelly to the wizard without delay, and on the way I noticed it is hard to miss after all, that it's blackberry season, so I spent some time picking up some of those because I was already nearby. By the end of the day, I reached level 8 in foraging. I woke up to rain and no husband in bed the next day. What a way to start my marriage. The wizard gave me the recipe for monster musk, so if I ever go hunting for dust sprites to farm coal, this recipe could be useful. With my upgraded barn finished, I tried to buy a pig and contemplated buying a sheep, but I decided against it since I'm so close to getting to 16k anyway. I then spent most of the day running all over town, collecting any blackberries in sight. I noticed there was a prize ticket from my completed order, so I went to Lewis's and redeemed it for an apple tree. I also noticed the train notification, so I scurried on over to the train station and was happy to collect some free coal. I tried to get into Elliot's shack, but it was locked. I hope he's not doing anything sketchy in there. On the 67th, I had enough money to buy me my pig. Although I really don't pay attention to how long pigs stay as babies, so I'm not quite sure it will grow up in time to find me a truffle for the community center. Instead of looking it up on the wiki, I'd rather just hold out hope. And so after tending to my chores, I hopped over to Marnie's and purchased my piggy. But only one was on the menu for today since I seemed to be strapped for gold. Again, since I was in the area with a lot of blackberries. I collected some of them. What can I say? I enjoy a good forage session. On my way back to town, I entered the infamous Penny cutscene and made sure to put her in her place while George backpedaled. I don't know how these people functioned without me and my sage knowledge and abilities. I then made a trip to the community center to donate a few things and finish the animal bundle. Afterwards, I went back to the mines for some resource gathering. Exiting the mines, I got the wild bait cutscene before heading to bed for the night. On Friday, I went over to the traveling cart bright and early and noticed the rabbit's foot. I could upgrade my coop to get a rabbit and hope it would drop a foot in time, or I could just spend a pretty penny to get the foot outright. And the decision was easy. I just decided to buy it outright. On my way into town, I gave Marnie the amaranth she asked for and then paid Clint a visit to open up some of my geodes. I donated what I could and I finally realized I had all 4 scrolls, so I picked up the Dwarfish translation guide. I went to the community center and purchased the 5k bundle. I guess somewhere along the way I also did purchase the 2.5k bundle as well. After doing so, I headed to the mines and spent the rest of my day there. To my surprise, I actually got a prismatic shard in the process. Not that I'm complaining. Now I just need the desert unlocked so I can put it to good use. At the end of the day, I reached level 7 in combat. Saturday the 13th, Marnie was pounding on my door, requesting a cave carrot. I decided to get that cutscene over with, so I visited her shortly after, and at least she seems thankful. I spent a little time in the mines before taking some of my items I left in my mines chest back to the farm. To be honest, the rest of the day was pretty uneventful as I tended to chores and organized my chests. On the 70th day, Elliot gave me a cup of coffee, and then I promptly gifted it right back to him. Joke's on him. Seems a little conceited that he actually enjoyed the gift. This was another slower paced day. I took care of my animals, got to tell my money makers that they matter, and then bought more seeds to fill my field before running about town and eventually settling at the mines, where I did finally say hi to the dwarf. I really don't know why I didn't just buy the backpack upgrade already. I mean, now that I have Elliot, I think he should start pulling his weight around financially, but I don't think he got that memo. You can't say I married him for his wallet, but you can say I married him for his looks. I'm not ashamed of who I am, even if I am a little ashamed of who I married. The next day, I woke up to the notification that Fancy Feast loves me. All those pets have paid off. Although it is a common affliction people and pets alike fall victim to when in the presence of such a fancy person like myself. I had people falling in love with me all the time. Ignore the fact Elliot was a bit of a slow burn. Lewis once again reminded me of the fair. Luckily for me, his reminder didn't put me in a panic because I've been hoarding some of my higher value items just for this occasion. I went into town and picked up a special order for Clint, and then I headed directly to the mines to get to work. And it was a successful day in the mines, but it unfortunately had to come to an end because of the late hour. But I was very close to finishing the order for Clint. Because of all my efforts, I gained level 8 in mining and only brought home a little profit since I didn't have time to do my nightly chores. Elliot told me he was taking better care of himself, and I guess that means he doesn't stink anymore. I'll count that as a win in my book. Today's the fair, so I did my daily farming duties. Marnie informed me I can adopt more pets at her shop, and I've got to say, you can never have too many cats. Before heading to the fair, I grabbed the items I stashed away just for this occasion. When I entered the town, I quickly set up my Grange display and then made sure to talk to everyone I saw. After that, I informed Lewis he could judge the displays, so in the meantime, I spun the wheel, but I didn't have enough stars to bet, so I waited for Lewis to announce the winner. And unsurprisingly, I got first place. Rightfully so. So far, this year, it's been a clean sweep for me of all the festivals, and I'm not complaining. Unless I lose, then I'll be complaining. Not wasting any time, I made sure to collect my items from the Grange display before going back to the wheel to place some bets. It didn't take long for me to get 2k tokens, but I did want to get more than just a star drop, so I placed some more bets. I was pretty lucky, so it took a short time getting enough tokens for the star drop, prize ticket, rare crow, fedora, rug, and sunflowers. I didn't lie when I said I did a clean sweep, and just to finish things off, I placed some more bets and grabbed the hay while I was at it. Before I called it for the night, I rushed over to the community center to donate the last of the fall crops bundle so that I could finally access the greenhouse. During the start of the 73rd day, Elliot acknowledged that I was a pro farmer, and I can't do nothing but heartily agree with him. I like him when he strokes my ego. I planted the apple tree I got from the claw machine in the greenhouse, so I'll have enough apples for Marnie's bundle in the community center. I then popped into Clint's for some more geode mashing. Abigail eats rocks and Clint mashes them. Maybe Abigail is the one Clint should be pining after. I redeemed my prize ticket and got the Friendship 101 book before donating my items to Gunther. I got the notification that a train was passing through, so I hurried over to the train station. It just gave some basic geodes, and so I spent the rest of the day going through the mines for more materials, working on my crusade to murder bats for Clint. I ended up completing a monster slaying goal in the process. Clint must be tired of crushing all my geodes because he gave me the recipe for a geode crusher. My little piggy was just that, a little piggy. So I am starting to sweat a little bit. I need him to give me a truffle. Anyway, since I had enough money to finish the boiler room bundles, I headed over to the community center and bought the last 2 bundles there. On my way back, I purchased a pomegranate tree for both Elliot and the community center because I am efficient like that. I crafted some more preserve jars to ramp up production, and then I spent some time chopping down the community's trees since I had used a lot of my wood to craft those preserve jars. I was able to craft 1 iridium sprinkler, so I went ahead and placed it in the greenhouse. And then I also crafted a seed maker so that I could begin multiplying my number of ancient fruits. In the meantime, I placed some winter roots in the seed maker, so I'll get some winter seeds, which will allow me to complete the winter foraging bundle quicker. Quite the big brain move, just one of the qualities I naturally possess. Bright and early, I got a letter from Caroline requesting a pumpkin. Before trying to fulfill that request, I did my normal duties while doing my best to fill the greenhouse with some winter seeds. And then once it was a little past 10, I grabbed my prismatic shard and made my way to the desert, unlocking the galaxy sword. I also paid Sandy a visit and bought some starfruit seeds for my greenhouse. I did pay a little impromptu visit to the Skull Caverns. I ended up finding a chest floor on level 19 and eventually made it down to level 50 before I passed out. You've never been to the mines if you haven't at least passed out once before. Mr. Key was a little late to the program because he wanted me to go down to level 25, but he should know right away I've been to level 50 already. Oh well, I guess another trip to the desert is in order. But because I didn't get to do some of my usual farm activities, my mayo, cheese, preserve, and wine production is a little bit more backed up than usual. I paid Caroline a visit to give her pumpkin she wanted, but she was kind of rude asking me about a honeymoon I didn't have. I guess you could call my excursion to the desert a honeymoon, but it was just me, and I did end up passing out, so I don't think that's a romantic getaway in the slightest. Despite having the geode crusher recipe, I still headed to Clint's to open my geodes. As usual, I also made a corresponding trip to the museum to donate my findings, but then I headed straight back to Clint because I had the iron bar he asked for. Redirecting my attention to the greenhouse, I planted my starfruit before crafting more cakes. I then did a bit of foraging and tree cutting before it was finally late enough to call it quits for the day. At this point, as you see, I've mostly stopped smoking fish since I've been focused on other endeavors, and the ancient fruit and starfruit wine will be a bigger moneymaker anyway. Such is the way in Stardew Valley. It all leads back to starfruit and ancient fruit at the end of the day. Evelyn greeted me at the door on the morning of the 77th day. She complimented my fancy farm. I'm sure she felt almost compelled to do so because I just exude so much fancy. She did give me a garden pot a couple days after I unlocked the greenhouse. Suspicious timing. I mean, the pot would have been a lot more useful earlier in my farming journey. Mr. Key gave me a letter that he finally got the memo that I had passed level 25 in the mines. Maybe he's more resourceful than I first gave him credit for, and I do like that he rewarded me for my efforts. Although I think he could have forked over a little bit more cash, just saying. It was a nice day for my preserve production, and an even nicer day to drop off my pickaxe for a gold upgrade and to use my funds to buy that final backpack upgrade. I fear I have waited a bit too long for this upgrade. No need to hold the applause. I know this is a historic moment, and so it shall be written in one of the books stored in the museum. The 77th day was the monumental day Elle Incorporated finally got her last backpack upgrade. Wasting no time in celebration, I checked the the traveling cart, but there was nothing noteworthy to purchase there, which I didn't mind because when I got back to my farm, my loyal piggy had found some truffles just about in the nick of time. I was cutting it close since winter was soon approaching, but I did pull it off. I shuffled some preserve jars around, and I know my farm isn't exactly looking peak fancy, but all in due time. Just add it to the backlog, you know? I crafted a truffle oil maker and started my truffle oil production. I have to say, farming truffles and turning it into oil is definitely one of my personal favorite ways to make money. I don't care if there's not a huge difference between an iridium truffle and the truffle oil. With the right perks, I will always still process the truffle to my heart's content, and if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine. With my truffle in my large pockets, I made it to the community center to finish the chef's bundle. I reined in those profits, and suddenly all the struggle through the past 2 seasons seems worth it. The next day, I finally made use of my crystallarium, placed a ruby inside so I can get those sweet, spicy eels from the desert trader. This entire day was filled with my typical farming activities. I crafted some more tappers to ramp up my cake supply. I even changed things up and changed the color of my barn, but I didn't really do anything else noteworthy. I had such a big day yesterday that it's okay to slack off a bit. The 79th day, I remembered to check the special order board and picked up a request for ectoplasm for the wizard. I don't even want to know what a single man does with that in his free time. My gold pickaxe was ready, so I picked it up on the way back, which I don't really know if you would classify Clint's as on the way back, but we're just gonna pretend, okay? Eager to use my new pickaxe, I zoomed over to the desert, bought some spicy eel, and then plunged into the cavern. I admit I didn't come into the mines too prepared, but I have yet to die from any monsters in this save, and I hope that streak doesn't end now. And now I hope I don't jinx myself. That's a problem for a future me. I once again reached level 50 in the mines, and maybe I'm fated to go no further. I passed out and let someone else deal with figuring out how to get me home. I finally reached level 10 in farming, and I fear I might have chosen the wrong profession because I do not care about either of these perks, but I chose Coop Master. I also reached level 8 in combat. Elliot greeted me with one of his insecurities. He should trust me. I mean, one of the reasons why I married him was his luscious locks, after all. Why would I cut them off? It's such a beautiful sight to behold. All the machines ready with their goodies. Linus informed me he found me passed out last night. I wonder how he even got to the desert, and even more importantly, I wonder how he and some pickpocketer casually stumbled upon me on floor 50 of the Skull Caverns. You know what? I bet Mr. Key makes most of his money by pickpocketing everyone who passes out in the caverns. And I don't quite know how to feel about it, but I think I kinda oddly respect it. Even with some of my money stolen from me, I still had enough funds to upgrade my coop, so that's exactly what I ended up doing, after which I decided why not spend the rest of my money, so I traded with the desert trader before spending the rest of my gold on starfruit seeds. Since I was in the area, I did a quick trek through the Skull Caverns. I didn't make it very far down before heading home. I may be fancy, but I do know when to call it quits. I crafted another iridium sprinkler for the greenhouse. I put down some speed grow and some of the seeds I had on hand, ending the day with some healthy profits. My sweet gem berries were finally ready for harvest. Another star drop, here I come. Marty informed me she had an auto grabber in stock, but what I really want is an auto petter. She definitely needs to up her game. And I needed to up my Skull Caverns game, so I used my desert totem and headed over to the mines. Okay, this is totally embarrassing. I both jinxed and cursed myself. I once again got to level 50, and then as I was fleeing, one of those devil serpents attacked me and I died on the inside. A fate worse than death, some would say. On the bright side, I had time to harvest the winter forage I planted, and I'll be able to finish the winter forage bundle now. But I didn't have enough time to do so that day, so I went to bed instead, and in happier news, I reached level 9 in mining. The next day was a nice and rainy day. Lewis reminded me of Spirit's Eve, which is tomorrow. Can't wait to find a golden pumpkin I can't sell. Instead of making money, I paid Barney a visit and spent some of my money on a rabbit instead, and I bought 2 heaters in preparation for winter. I took a detour and gave one of my sweet gem berries to the statue man, and he gave me a star drop. And yeah, I just realized I planted a couple sweet gem berries, which normally sell for a decent amount, but because they can't be put in any machine, they'll just have to collect dust in a chest. Call me a collector, why don't you? Please, or else I'll cry. Afterwards, I took my winter forage and completed the winter forage bundle, which then finished off the craft room. The community center is coming along nicely. Picked up my free ring before heading heading to the mine since I still had that special orders request to fulfill. I will say I really do like the fact that the mines reset with the 1.6 update so I can get some more coal from all those carts and bags. The Junimo so kindly repaired the broken bridge at the end of the day. This day was Spirit's Eve, but first I had to go to the train station because a train was passing through, and all I got for it was 2 pieces of clay and 4 pieces of stone. Even with the triple espresso coursing through my veins, that trek was definitely not worth the effort. I cut down some tree stumps to collect enough hardwood to fix the tree near Marnie's house. In the meantime, while I waited for the raccoons to move in, I crafted another keg, and then I went in to check on Elliot, and he's giving off major weird vibes. Like, why is he even thinking of trading me off? I mean, I guess I'm the most valuable thing he has, but he just needs a good bonk on the head. Before heading out to the festival, I did a bit more crafting. Once the festivities had begun, I bought the rare crow, and then I easily made my way through the maze, even though I could do nothing useful with the golden pumpkin. Yes, I know you can make clothes with it, but that's not useful to me, okay? I did a little schmoozing with the villagers before heading back to the safety of my farm. There's no place like home. The last day of fall was also the last day to complete my special order for the wizard, so I prepared to go to the Skull Caverns. Before I did that though, I greeted my new raccoon friend, checked the traveling cart, and then did a few trades with the desert trader before plunging into the deep unknown. I'm pretty sure my luck was busted this day. I don't want to talk about it because I didn't complete the special order and I didn't get very far, and it's all very traumatic for me and my fancy expectations. So we will all collectively agree that this day didn't happen. Okay, thank you. And with that, the fall season has come to a close and it's the beginning of winter. I'm very close to finishing the community center, and with a bit more planning, I know I can get further into the Skull Caverns. My self-imposed fancy limitations are beginning to feel less and less like limitations as I progress further and further into the game. Elliot informed me that winter is a great time to read a book, but isn't that basically all he does anyway? Does he really need the season change to justify him doing nothing productive around the farm? I mean, don't get me wrong, he is a writer, but he suspiciously hasn't written another book since our marriage. I'm not saying he's a gold digger, but if the shoe fits, he might as well wear it. When I finally left my farm for the day, I was greeted by a fleeing Krobus, or an unconfirmed appearance of him. I took the minecarts to Clint's to have my pickaxe upgraded for one final time. And then I donated the bones I collected from the Skull Caverns. I checked the special orders board and chose to go with Demetrius's request for some linkod. It will be a good excuse to pick up my fishing rod since I've kind of abandoned smoking fish for the past couple weeks. I tended to my crab pots and then took a couple of them to be placed on my farm to get those periwinkles the raccoons wanted. In doing so, I stumbled across Elliot heading back to his shack. How exactly does he afford the rent on the place still? My own husband is a mystery to me. Regardless, I gave him a lobster before finding the shadow guy on my way to my farm. I put down my crab pots and then changed the color of my fully upgraded coop to match my barn. Then I spent the rest of the day fishing at the mountain lake so that I could finally ramp back up fish smoking operations. My donation efforts paid off as Gunther greeted me with the key to Krobus's lair. He must have been so stunned by my fanciness the other day that he made Gunther give me the key. Willie rudely challenged me in my abilities, questioning my fishing ability as he asked me to catch a squid. I'll show him. Obviously, I descended into the sewers to greet Krobus, even if I didn't purchase anything from him, and I did contemplate changing one of my professions, but I decided against it and instead accepted Clint's help wanted quest. And I came to a sad realization. Not that I've been focused on gifting people's birthday gifts, as the villagers really should be focused on gifting me things. I unfortunately unlocked Krobus the day after his birthday. A moment of silence, please. To get my mind off my failure, I went to the beach to fish my sorrow away. But I didn't stay there too long since the beach was too close to the sewers and I couldn't get Krobus off my mind. So I bought the iridium fishing rod and headed to the mountain lake. I caught my first linkod of the season. Only 9 more to go. I only managed to catch 1 more before it was time to hit the hay. I gained level 8 in fishing, so I had some reason not to cry myself to sleep. My iridium pickaxe was ready to be picked up, so I did just that first thing in the morning. Since I was already there, I also had Clint crack open my geodes. Big surprise there. And then it was time to head back to the mountain lake to fish up some more linkods for Demetrius. Luck was on my side because I caught 7 of them and just needed to get my little hands on one more before I'm done with that special order. Elliot got deep way too early in the morning, so I nodded and then ran away to tend to the farm since someone's gotta do it. I went back to the mountain lake, and after a little bit of effort, I caught the final lingcod I needed. I went to pick up my prize ticket and redeemed it for a fish smoker. How fitting. After that, I headed down to the beach to fish there. It was only 4:30 and it was getting so dark out. This game really is so immersive. I was eventually able to fish up a squid, so I scurried over to the saloon and handed the slimy thing to Willie. Since I was already there, I bought Shane a beer. I have to admit, I have a soft spot for him, and the holidays are approaching, okay? He deserves a little sweet treat. Don't tell Elliot. I headed home and ended up entering a cutscene with Shane himself. He's obviously drinking the beer I gave him, so I think it went to good use. I turned in the smoked fish to the raccoon, but I still needed to collect the periwinkles before he'll be satisfied with my efforts. As you can see, I definitely ramped up my fish smoking efforts. My gold axe was ready, and Elliot was waiting to greet me outside. He obviously didn't get the memo that we have auto feeders because he went and fed the animals anyway. I had my first starfruit harvest, and I'm so excited for the profits to roll in. I headed on over to the desert to replenish my starfruit seed supply, and then I couldn't resist the call to the mine, so I did a little bit of mining. I mean, I was already there, so why not? And yeah, it was a good decision because I got a red cabbage seed. The community center will be mine, and it will be fancy. Write that in the history books. Not only that, but I also got another prismatic shard that I could donate to the museum, but unfortunately, I only got to level 46 and then was tag teamed and obliterated, so I woke up at Harvey's. I swear if I lose my red cabbage, I will be out for revenge, out for blood. Luckily, I lost nothing I really cared about. I rushed to plant my starfruit seeds and ended up passing out for the second time as I struggled to get to bed. My gold axe was still ready for pickup, and Linus informed me once again he found me passed out, and I was a victim of pickpocketing. I passed out on my farm, so that is highly suspicious. Maybe it's Linus who was the one pickpocketing me, and that's how he's able to pay for all these quests. Regardless, Elliot should have protected me. Clint requested me to give an amethyst to Emily, and I guess I'll do it since my love life doesn't seem to be thriving at the moment. Not that Clint's ever will be either. I swear Stardew Valley didn't need a farmer to come in town, they needed a therapist. I finally trudged over to Clint's and picked up my gold axe, and then you know it, I had Clint break open geodes for me. As a thank you, I delivered Emily her amethyst. After that, I visited the quarry for the first time and did a bit of needed cleanup, which took up most of the day. In the process, I found a secret note challenging me to get to level 100 of the Skull Caverns. I crafted a few more kegs and a tapper before tapping out for the night. There's simply nothing more frightening than being greeted by Pierre first thing in the morning, especially when he could have just told me that in a letter. Lewis reminded me of the Festival of the Ice, and I plan to obliterate everyone who dares try to beat me, since I've won all competitions so far, and this will be no different. I spent most of my day just doing some chores and destroying the ecosystem, all in a day's work. The 92nd was the Festival of the Ice, so I made sure my farm was in working order before heading down to Marnie's. Filled with determination, I bought the rare crow before making sure to intimidate everyone I saw before the competition took place. And yeah, I secured the bag. There was no question about it, but the townfolk really haven't put up a lot of competition. I mean, there really hasn't been anything I haven't won this year. Waking up from my win, the next day I just kept on winning, as I had enough periwinkle to give the raccoon. He rewarded me with some powder melon seeds. I planted those seeds and then checked the special order board. I ended up picking up Robin's wood request and a help wanted request for Leah as well. I spent the rest of the day working on gathering wood for Robin. I guess she's not the only one with ambitions to destroy the environment. I can respect it, and it just so happens I reached level 9 foraging. Mass destruction does pay off. Elliot informed me he thinks he'll do some writing. Excuse me, sir, but it's about time you contributed around here, so get to work. I know I'm supposed to be collecting wood for Robin, but I decided to have her build me a shed anyway. I wanted a nice warm location to store my preserve jars since there's quite a bit of them now. I brought a bear some maple syrup in the forest, and then I saw bubbles in the river and couldn't resist. Fancy calls to fancy, what can I say? I headed back up to the quarry to continue my cleaning efforts and was able to clear the entire quarry in the process. I really do just love the simple things in life sometimes. The next day, I harvested my red cabbage and then celebrated by heading to the desert to destroy the ecosystem there. No land will remain safe from me and my axe. I completed the dye bundle at the community center, and now there's only 2 bundles left. I just need some apples and a pomegranate, both of which are growing in my greenhouse. greenhouse. I then went to the little cave by the quarry and secured the golden scythe. To be honest, I can't really remember what it does that the normal one doesn't, but it's so shiny, so I had to have it. My efforts in the mine leveled me up to 9 in combat. On the 96th, I walked out to Elliot reading the mail for once, or at least some of the mail. He'll be leaving me for a week. Maybe this is the honeymoon Caroline was talking about. I put on a sad face for Elliot, but I told him I'll be fine, and to be honest, he seems a little bit out of touch because everyone knows fine means the exact opposite, but he's still gonna leave regardless. And let's be honest, there really won't be a difference when he's gone. I'm the true fancy one in the relationship. I finished opening the mail Elliot didn't get to, and I received a quest from the wizard for Void Essence. I'll get to that later as I went to the desert to finish a help wanted quest for Sandy that I picked up earlier, and then I hand delivered the wizard his requested Void Essence. It totally slipped my mind that it was Squid Fest, so I paid a visit to the beach to go fishing. I was able to secure 6 squids and I collected my rewards, but they're nothing too great, so I continued to fish and got 2 more squids I needed for the Iridium level prize, which was a book. All that fishing had me leveling to 9 in fishing. It's the first day I woke up without Elliot in a while, and it's kind of nice. Oh wait, I spoke too soon because Elliot sent me a letter, so it's kind of like he's here with me, and I feel like he speaks way more in this letter than what he ever says to me typically. Since my shed was done, I moved my preserves and some of my kegs inside. I also moved my cheese, mayo machine, and truffle oil maker to go into the coop and barn accordingly. See, my farm is starting to feel more fancy by the minute. I redeemed my prize ticket for some treasure, and then you guessed it, I had Clint open them up for me. I got another ancient seed. At this point, I don't really need the ancient seed drops, but it somehow makes me feel a little blessed. I then just spent the rest of the day tending to chores and organizing my chests. With only 2 days left, I had a spring in my step as I opened a letter from Lewis about the impending night market. Elliot sent me another letter to let me know he's alive, and then I continued to organize the farm. See how productive I am without Elliot around? Okay, I know it sounds kind of like I hate the man, and I do. I mean, I don't. I swear. It's just so easy to poke fun at him. That's a true sign of love right there. I headed to the forest to chop more wood, and I was finally able to finish Robin's special order request, so I went over to Lewis's to redeem my prize ticket and got a houseplant. And so I traveled back home to continue organizing the place, ending the night all alone in my twin bed. Unsurprisingly, Elliot sent me another letter in the mail, and really, I've never heard Elliot say so much until he was gone. I went to Clint's to open some geodes before heading to Gunther's to donate some artifacts I've collected. I picked up another Demetrius special order to catch 20 river fish. I started working on this order straight away, catching a decent amount of fish in the process. But I took a break to head to the sewers and change my profession for farming so that I'll get better perks. Then I went to the cave by the quarry to spend some time before the night market. I was able to collect enough coal for a request from Clint, so I cashed that in before enjoying the festivities of the night market. I resisted the urge to buy anything and instead enjoyed the mermaid show. I got a pearl that I'll never be able to sell, tale as old as time. Maybe I should start a display of all the fancy things I have but can't sell. Ooh, and then I could charge people to look at the collection. Turning off my brain to quiet these truly brilliant thoughts, I got to re-choose my farming profession. I went with tiller and then artisan, so my goods are worth a lot more now. Ooh, we've made it to day 100, and boy has it been a long time in the making. Elliot's letters are getting shorter, but he doesn't know that this will be our last day together. I checked on the greenhouse and the fruit trees are so close to producing, but they're not quite there yet. I picked up a help wanted quest for Robin, and then I hurried over to the river to fish so I could complete Demetrius's special order request, but I didn't stay fishing too long before I went to my new favorite place, the mine next to the quarry, to collect stone for Robin. With enough stone collected, I headed back to the river to fish to pass the time before the night market. Yet again, I didn't buy anything, but I did decide to go into the submarine, which I'm a little skeptical about after a certain Titanic-related event, and participated in some underwater fishing. I managed to make it back home just in time, and that's the end of my 100 fancy days of Stardew. Wow. I know I didn't get to complete the community center, but it's just right around the corner for me. But you won't see that. Just kidding. Tell me at least one of you fell for it. Please. It will make me feel better. But I'm sure that you could tell by the length of the video that things weren't quite ending here. I mean, how anticlimactic would that be? Not only did I not complete the community center, but there's 12 days left in the season. 12. I can power through this. On the 101st day, Clint had a request for me and Elliot continued his streak of sending me letters. I harvested my first apple and I'm getting so close to being able to finish the community center. I know I keep saying that, but it does remain true. I made sure to smoke the fish I caught at the night market and then I gave Clint that iron bar he was looking for. After that, I accepted another help wanted task from Robin and then spent my time fishing in the river. Finally, I closed out that biome balance request. I picked up my prize ticket on the way to the night market where I once again got into the submarine to do some fishing. Guess what? I got another ancient seed. I said it once, I'll say it again. This save is ancient seed blessed, which like I said means I am blessed, which means I am fancy. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. The next day, I found out that Linus was my special friend. No, my secret friend. And I think it's fitting since Linus has been the one to find me when I passed out. Unless, like I theorized, he's the one who's been robbing me, because if that's the case, he deserves a healthy dose of clay. For some reason, the villagers in this town really don't like clay. I skimmed through Elliot's letter before getting down to business. My pomegranate tree had finished growing, so now I just need one more apple and then I'll be able to finally finish the community center. I crafted more kegs, mayo machines, and preserve jars. This was just a low-key day in preparation for completing the community center tomorrow. I woke up the next morning to Elliot and my bed was missing, but I can appreciate that the first thing Elliot was gonna do was chores. As he should. I guess I did train him well. You bet I collected that last apple I needed, and oh, the traveling cart finally decided to have a pomegranate now that I don't need one anymore. I see how it is. I see you, concerned ape. On my way to the community center, I upgraded my axe to iridium quality, and then I splurged on an iridium sprinkler from Krobus. As you can see, I really was in no rush to complete the community center. I even picked up another help wanted quest for Robin, and then I finally turned my attention to the community center, finishing the enchanters bundle and fodder bundle. And yeah, the community center is completely fixed. It's like a weight off my shoulders. There's still stuff to do because I gave Robin her ruby and then headed over to the desert to buy more starfruit seeds. Back from my excursion to the desert, I made sure to redeem my prize ticket for a star drop tea. I bought a little beer for Shane on my way home. I planted those starfruit seeds and tended to my production shed, collecting some starfruit wine, which I just want to say is my personal favorite wine to produce. What a great start to the 104th day. The town was in good spirits because of me and my efforts, my fancy efforts. In celebration, I gathered supplies and headed to the Skull Caverns. Finally broke the 50 level curse as I was able to plunge to level 80, and yeah, I managed to pick up another prismatic shard. Passing out for the night, I reached level 10 in mining, and I went with the prospector profession. Because I finished the bulletin board at the community center, I was bombarded with recipes in my mailbox. I also got a letter from Willie about his back room. Ginger Island, here I come. At least in spirit, because I definitely won't have enough resources for that right now. I paid a visit to the raccoon and his new wife, giving them both items they requested. In return, they gave me the raccoon journal. Heading into town for the first time since I completed the community center, the town put on a celebration for me and my fanciness. Life just doesn't get better than this, and it just keeps getting sweeter as Pierre sucker punched Morris. I do have to say this is Pierre's one redeeming quality. I picked up my iridium axe and then dropped off my watering can for the same upgrade. I crafted 2 more kegs and checked the traveling cart. I still needed to complete that quest for Robin, so I headed over to the forest to collect hardwood. On my way back, I purchased another piggy and then gave Robin the hardwood I collected. Things are shaping up so nicely. Just don't mention Ginger Island and I'm on track. Because even I'll admit, I might have not made the best decision. I used one of my batteries to craft another iridium sprinkler. Okay, but in my defense, when I was going through this day, it had been a while since I repaired the boat to Ginger Island, so I forgot all about the batteries, so go easy on me. To lighten my spirits, I placed my fancy trophy at the start of my farm so everyone could see my brilliance. Jody greeted me, and honestly, I can't remember the last time I talked to this woman, and now she wants to have dinner with me? Hey, I don't blame her, especially after I completed the community center. But girl, I don't know you like that. I got the good news Pierre's was open 7 days a week, as it should be. Pierre deserves no days off. I said what I said. I crafted another keg. My keg collection is slowly growing, and I can't be mad about it. I climbed up to the mountain lake to try to get that fish for Jody, against my better judgment, since I had smoked most of mine. On my way down, I ran into Marnie and Lewis, and in a lapse of judgment, I decided to keep their love a secret again. Now that I think about it, how much older is Lewis than Marnie, exactly? I picked up a special order for Gus, and then headed back home for the evening. Elliot said the bachelor life wasn't for him, but I think he's trying to convince himself that and not me. I scurried over to Clint's to pick up my watering can. I dropped off one of my hose for an upgrade and had him open more geodes for me. Clint just can't get rid of me because I show up yet again with some mystery boxes for him to open. I donated what I could for Gunther, you know the drill. And of course, I still made sure not to pick up any of the rewards. I visited the desert to cut down some trees and buy more starfruit seeds. I planted those seeds in my greenhouse, and then I headed over to the cave near the quarry. I don't know what it's called, clearly. I just really love those coal nodes. And I got a lucky ring out of it, even if I'll never use it. For the 24th of winter, I was reminded that the Feast of the Winter Star, aka Christmas, was tomorrow. Unfortunately, there's gonna be no competition there to win, but my ego is big enough already after completing the community center. I paid Robin a visit so that she'll build a horse stable for me. I'm tired of not being able to ride a horse everywhere. After Robin's, I hit up Marnie's and bought 2 ducks and 2 chickens. I finally decided it was time to venture to the back room at Willie's, and suddenly I'm really regretting fixing the raccoon house. Rookie mistake on my part. Motivated, I ventured to the secret woods and chopped down some stumps. I don't have comfort with the Meadowlands farm here, since I usually can rely on the stumps on my farm of choice, the forest farm. Since I still had some time left in the day, I went back over to that one cave, you know the one, and I went about slaying monsters and smashing rocks. And look, there's Santa. And yeah, I'm supposed to believe tomorrow isn't Christmas. Okay, concerned ape. Elliot was not in the festive spirit this morning. He didn't even get me a gift. How rude. But at least Shane was a good friend. He put in the effort and sent me a Christmas gift, and I really appreciate that. I made sure to have a Star Drop tea in my pockets for Linus, and then I spent my time tending to the farm before the feast. Since Elliot didn't give me anything, I crafted myself the gift of a keg so that I could drink all my sorrows away. Then I went to the feast all by myself. I made sure to talk to everyone. You should know the drill by now. And I gave Linus his gift. He seemed to love it, and oh, I guess Elliot had pulled my name, and now I feel a little bad about being so harsh. But to be fair, he just gave me a muffin. He could have at least given me the tea set. Have some decency, Elliot. But then that would mean he was useful, and we couldn't have that. The day after the feast, Gus was asking for an albacore. People have literally no shame. You give so much to the community, and they will take and take and take. I can't seem to catch even a day off, and it is most certainly too late to go the JoJo route now. Marnie, on the other hand, takes lots of days off, so I made sure to catch her while she was in the office so I could buy another pig. I made sure to collect more hardwood for the boat, and then I spent time fishing at the dock for some albacore. After hours and hours of fishing, I did end up catching the albacore, and I didn't hesitate in informing Gus. And maybe that's why everyone continues to ask me for things. I complain behind their back, but deliver results right away. Maybe I need to rethink that. On the historic second to last day of this season, my stable was ready, so I named my horse after my favorite sentient car, and then purchased another pig from Marnie. And then I stopped by the dwarf shop to buy a healthy dose of bombs. My next stop was to the desert trader to get even more bombs. I bring the boom! With my bombs in hand, I decided to pay a visit to the Skull Caverns, even though most of the day was already over. I didn't make it far before returning home to my horse, ending the day a little bit earlier than expected. Okay guys, this is the actual final day, and it's clear I won't be fixing that boat today, so I should go ahead and focus on the mines. It's now now or never. I still tended to my farming duties because I do actually enjoy doing some of that. And I mean, how rude would it be not to pet all my animals? I'm fancy, not heartless. Come on now. I made sure to eat some spicy eel before entering the mines. I'm hoping I find lots of holes to jump into. Things are not looking so good. I'm slaying monsters left and right, finding the occasional shaft to fall down into. If I didn't have brain damage before all this, I definitely do now. But then I got stuck with a dino floor and my life flashed right before my eyes. I was close to floor 100, but it felt like I was on floor 1. The most unfortunate part was the dinos didn't even have the courtesy to drop an egg. So I had quite literally nothing to cling on to. And I am sad to report I passed out on floor 87. I was so close, but not close enough. Good, but not good enough. Honestly though, I had such a fun time playing as a fancy farmer on Stardew 1.6. I'll let you in on a little secret. I actually filmed this footage like 7 to 8 months ago, so I have been sitting on this for a while. This gameplay footage was actually the first time I had really delved into 1.6, and I've actually reached perfection on a different save, so there definitely are things I would have done differently if I had played this today, especially in the Skull Caverns, so don't even mention it. But like I mentioned at the start of this video, I wasn't here trying to min-max the game. I was just trying to get through the game by giving myself a little bit of a challenge, albeit a fancy one, and it did end up being a challenge at the start, but as I got further into the year, it started to get less and less of one. I'm kind of impressed I never accidentally sold something I shouldn't have, but with that, you've made it this far. So comment down below saying, I survived watching Elle play 100 days of fancy Stardew Valley. Thank you so much for watching this absolute monstrosity of a video. Make sure to stay tuned for similar videos in the future. Bye!